Julius Caesar is Shakespeare's 21st play. It heralds a change in artistic direction after the comedies Much Ado About Nothing, Twelfth Night, and As You Like It. Now, it's believed to be Shakespeare's first great tragedy, preceding Hamlet by just a year. And Julius Caesar is unique because this is the first time an audience had been treated to a political play set in ancient Rome. With its fast pace, incredible rhetoric, conspiracy, assassination, civil war, supernatural omens, and ghosts, nothing like it had ever been seen on stage before. The first recorded performance of Julius Caesar is in September 1599, when Swiss tourist Thomas Platter the Younger watched an afternoon performance at the Globe Theatre and enthusiastically recorded his impressions in his diary. So the play can be defined as a tragedy, as the main character's downfall is the result of a tragic flaw in his character, but despite the title of the play being Julius Caesar, Caesar dies in Act 3, and it has therefore been argued that the tragic hero is Brutus, whose mistaken belief that he was acting for the public good led to his downfall. Julius Caesar is, of course, based on real historical events, and Shakespeare probably used Thomas North's translation of Plutarch's Lives of the Noble Greeks as his main source of information. Caesar, an important politician and military leader in ancient Rome, was born around 100 BC. You might remember from your history lessons that he invaded Britain in 55 BC, and more details of his life in relation to politics are the things we're going to focus on later in this video. Published in the 1623 First Folio, Julius Caesar reveals some interesting anachronisms, elements from the wrong period in time. For example, Casca refers to Caesar's doublet when he would have been wearing a Roman toga. And there are also references to clocks, which were not used in ancient Rome because they were invented hundreds of years later in the 14th century. Nevertheless, the themes are timeless, as we shall see when we look at the political backdrop of ancient Rome. So this is a bit complex, but of course context is assessed in the exam. You need to know these ideas. So in 44 BC, Julius Caesar was granted the title of Dictator Perpetuo, Dictator for Life, by the Roman Senate, a political institution in ancient Rome. And this moment ended almost 500 years later. This ended almost 500 years of the Roman Republic governing Rome and its territories. Now, the Republic, founded in 509 BC, was a system of government that elected its leaders. Its territories included North Africa, Italy, France, Spain, Greece, most of the Iberian Peninsula, and the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, in terms of the republican government, in ancient Rome, two classes of people had their voice in government: the patricians, the aristocrats, and the ordinary people, the plebeians. When the republic was first established, only patricians ruled, but this changed over time, and the republican government developed to include three institutions: the Senate, which consisted of 300 aristocratic patricians who were elected as members of the Senate and held those posts for life, and it was like the House of Lords. The patricians, however, had overall control of the government, and the plebeians could not be elected as members of the Senate. There were also tribunes of the people, two officials who represented the plebeians. They had their own assembly and could propose laws. And then there were the consuls. A consul was the equivalent of a head of state, who might be a patrician or a plebeian. The two consuls were approved by the plebeians and elected by the Senate, and they were elected to rule together for a year, and this was a safeguarding mechanism to stop one man from having too much power. Then we look at dictators. Now, in times of war, the consuls had the right to command armies. If the Republic had an emergency, one consul could be elected as dictator or supreme commander for 6 months. And in a break from tradition, Julius Caesar was granted the title of dictator for life, hence the concern of some that he would become a tyrant. So many years before Julius Caesar became dictator for life, the plebeians, who had greatly outnumbered the patricians, were discontented with the latter having overall control of the Senate, and this was aggravated by the patricians prioritizing luxurious lifestyles over public service. Wealthy men with private armies began to emerge, and they used their influence to eliminate their enemies and control the powers of the Senate. And three of these men were Julius Caesar, Pompey the Great, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, who formed a political alliance known as the First Triumvirate. Now, they had a private agreement to support each other, and they did not have any problem with achieving their aims through violence. Over time, though, their relationship began to crumble, and eventually Crassus died at the Battle of Carrhae in 53 BC, and Julia, who was Pompey's wife and Caesar's daughter, died in childbirth, and Caesar and Pompey's last link in their alliance disappeared with that. Meanwhile, the political climate in Rome, steeped in political corruption, chaos, and assassinations, just got worse and worse. Pompey aligned himself with the patricians, who regarded Caesar as a national threat, and Caesar illegally crossed the Rubicon, a provocative act that signified he was an invader. Supported by the Senate, Pompey was elected dictator in 49 BC and tasked to fight Caesar, who was now his enemy. Pompey lost the war and fled Rome, hotly pursued by Caesar, and he was eventually murdered in Egypt in 48 BC. Meanwhile, Caesar had a relationship with Cleopatra, and they had a son whom they named Caesarion. Now, Caesar the ruler. Let's have a think about this. Caesar initiated many reforms in the months before he was assassinated. For example, he restructured the Senate to better represent the people. He reorganized local government, he created the Julian calendar, relieved debt, introduced a fairer tax system, rebuilt Carthage and Corinth, which had been destroyed by war, and these actions made him increasingly popular, of course, with the plebeians. Although he was careful to fill the Senate with his allies, some members of the Senate worried that Caesar aspired to become king, something that had not happened for nearly 500 years, where Brutus's ancestors had helped to drive King Tarquin out of Rome. And his former enemies Gaius, Cassius, Longinus, and Marcus Junius Brutus, otherwise known as Cassius and Brutus, were particularly anxious. Caesar had forgiven them and invited them to join the Senate, and this decision would ultimately result in his downfall. 2 years after he was assassinated, Caesar was deified, he was turned into a god, and given the title the Divine Julius. So there were a lot of political consequences of his assassination. Mark Antony, Octavius, and Marcus Lepidus formed a second triumvirate to defeat Caesar's assassins, and in 27 BC, 17 years after the death of Julius Caesar, Octavius took the name Caesar Augustus and became the first Roman emperor. Ironically, Cassius and Brutus's assassination of Caesar enabled future dictators to come to power. Now you might sit through that and think, well, why did Shakespeare write about this? What's the significance to Elizabethans? Well, the play was performed when Queen Elizabeth I, who ruled from 1558 to 1603, was on the throne. Now, Elizabethans believed that they had more freedom than the citizens of the Republic of Rome because Queen Elizabeth I needed the consent of Parliament to pass laws and levy taxes, and the English were aware that they owed their loyalty to the Queen, but they regarded the rule of the good Queen Bess, or Gloriana, as fair and just. She was not, in their eyes, a tyrant. Now, the play was interesting to a contemporary audience for a range of reasons. Firstly, they would have been aware of Julius Caesar's 55 BC invasion of Britain and the Roman occupation, so a play about Caesar had historical relevance. In addition, the political turmoil in ancient Rome was present in Renaissance England. In 1536, Queen Elizabeth's father, King Henry VIII, had declared himself the head of the Church of England, rejecting the authority of the Roman Catholic Church, and consequently Catholic conspirators attempted numerous plots to seize the crown. There was a short period of Catholic rule under the reign of Queen Mary I, also known as Bloody Mary because of the Protestants she executed at the stake, and political and religious turmoil continued until the reign of her successor, the Protestant Queen Elizabeth I, who survived numerous attempts on her life by conspirators who wanted to put her cousin, the Catholic Mary, Queen of Scots, on the throne. So perhaps the most significant reason for the popularity of the play was that it externalized the anxieties of many Elizabethans of the time. When Julius Caesar was first performed in 1599, anxiety was high because the unmarried and childless queen refused to name an heir to the throne of England, and this created insecurity about the succession and concern about the possibilities of a civil war. Shakespeare therefore explored contemporary concerns about leadership and violence through his play Julius Caesar in its setting of ancient Rome. There are also, though, timeless themes that we can think about today when we're looking at the play in 2017, the theme of leadership, succession, civil war. These are themes that have continued throughout the centuries and mark the play just as relevant today as it was in Elizabethan times, and even before that, the actual themes of the real life story in ancient Rome. Now, some of the time frames are adapted, so I just want to finish with this. According to Plutarch, Caesar defeated the remaining supporters of Pompey in March 45 BC and returned to Rome in October of the same year when he established order in Rome. His assassins were defeated at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC, so Shakespeare condenses 3 years of history into 5 days, and they are summarized for you here on the screen and also in the ebook. Changing the time frame of historical events led to a much tenser, more fast-paced and exciting drama for the audience, and this begins when the citizens are waiting for Caesar to enter Rome after he has defeated Pompey's remaining supporters. So quite a lot of complex information that you need to understand just to get the sort of the contextual political backdrop. I hope you found the video useful. I'm not going to have time before this year's exam to put up all the videos on Julius Caesar, so quickly go and get yourself a copy of the ebook at mrbruff.com or amazon.co.uk.